a 79-year-long war that involved the two superpowers of the planet Sera, the Coalition of Ordered Governments, and the Union of Independent Republics. A war for the control of the newly discovered natural resource of emulsion. So as always, I'm your host Abz, and this is the Pendulum Wars in Gears of War lore. During an oil exploration drill, the humans discovered this golden, highly volatile fluid in the underground of Sera, known as the Hollow. It was unusable, and it was nothing more than a scientific curiosity, until Dr. Helen Cooper unlocked the emulsion substance by creating the light mass process, which enabled the refinement of emulsion into a source of cheap energy. Seemingly limitless, the discovery of emulsion as a fuel source marked the beginning of the golden age on Sera, cementing emulsion's place as a new and fairly abundant energy source, which ended Sera's dependency on fossil fuels. Unfortunately, emulsion happened to be the worst thing that could ever happen to the planet Sera. Now, the few countries that discovered an abundance of emulsion within their borders began to find themselves as Sera's economic and therefore political superpower. This led to the rise of the COG, and also the rise of the UIR, who happened to be a collection of nations deprived of emulsion, so they had shared grievances that formed a military, cultural and economic alliance. The war was soon called the Pendulum Wars, and the UIR fought the COG on vast fronts across Sera. For the next 79 years of the war became more than just about emulsion, but also a fight over freedom. The UIR fought the COG for dominance of Sera, and invaded poorer nations and colonizing them under the cloak of protection. The UIR, along with its socialist enemy, the COG, used the same military tactics that revolved around infantry-based warfare. The battles of the Pendulum Wars scarred many regions of Sera, with both the COG and UIR committing serious human rights abuses, as well as depriving the civilians of the natural resources. Now, there were some key moments and battles that we know of during the Pendulum Wars, so let's get into it. The construction of Azura. During the early Pendulum War era, the highest members of the coalition feared that the war would end in global annihilation, and so preparations began in order to protect the most valuable members of society, in order to rebuild with the keenest minds. Therefore, the coalition of ordered governments constructed the elite bunker facility on the island of Azura, and relocated politicians, scientists, artists, and others deemed to be valuable enough. The bunker was fitted to be an island resort hotel, a lavish environment unlike anything on the mainland, giving total peace to the minds of Azura, and until 17 AE, Azura remained completely confidential. The COG began to kidnap scientists in order to study for a possible cure for emulsion, for the research they would conduct outside of Azura would cause a leak of the information regarding the emulsion parasite. This of course led to public speculation as to where the scientists had disappeared, with several tabloids being correct that a secret island was holding these select few. Among the many valuable residents of Azura was none other than Niall Sampson, a renowned scientist in Tyrus, who of course went down a dark path under the Coalition's Department of Health years later. The New Hope Research Facility. After decades of emulsion mining, many emulsion miners came down with a fatal lung condition known as rust lung. Thanks to the overexposure to emulsion, the Coalition's Department of Health, under the Monroe administration, opened the New Hope Research Facility to house the children of emulsion miners infected with rust lung, in an attempt to study the disease and find a possible cure to continue emulsion mining. And good old Dr. Niall Sampson was tasked as the facility's director. But Dr. Sampson basically went bonkers and no longer wanted to pursue a cure for rust lung, but the ability to evolve the human race into a stronger, healthier, immortal species, with the sires having potential for military combat in helping end the Pendulum Wars. He wanted to create super soldiers to defeat the UIR, in essence. After whistleblowers alerted the COG's high command and investigations took place on the New Hope Research Facility, Dr. Sampson attempted to persuade Chairman Monroe that the sires had military potential, but Chairman Monroe ordered the facility shut down and all involved to be indicted. However, a secret political group within the COG believed in Dr. Sampson's work and its potential to end the Pendulum Wars by using genetically enhanced soldiers. This fringe political party relocated Dr. Sampson, his remaining loyal employees, and many of their subjects to a secret laboratory hidden in a mountain called Kadar. Several sires were left behind in stasis, protected by a semi-sentient security system designed by Dr. Sampson and based off his personality. The Mount Kadar Laboratory. Years later, due to this lab being out the public eye and away from COG scrutiny, Dr. Sampson was able to work freely and was able to overturn the genetic instability and sterility of the sires, thanks to Myrrah using her embryonic stem cells with sire DNA, resulting in a successful female hybrid called the matriarch, which was able to reproduce and create the first generation of Locust drones. It was discovered through Myrrah and the matriarch that all members of the Locust Horde were connected telepathically to a hive mind, in which Myrrah was able to control, fulfilling Dr. Sampson's attempt to create a highly controllable army of perfect soldiers. But Dr. Torres, who was one of the lab's best geneticists, developed a romantic relationship with Myrrah and conceived a human child together, a female named Raina. But Dr. Torres feared the experiments his daughter would be subjected to and thus escaped the facility with her. However, the scientists underestimated Myrrah's maternal feelings towards both her daughter and her Locust children. The Locusts themselves longed for independence and felt imprisoned and tortured by the scientists. Myrrah resented the humans for the treatment of her and her children, and therefore used the matriarch to compel her Locust to rebel. The Locust escaped and used discarded tools and weapons to slaughter the scientists and guards. Dr. Sampson commenced a lockdown of the facility, using the cryogenic gas to freeze the facility, and he downloaded his consciousness into a robot right before he was slaughtered. Myrrah and many of the Locusts were able to escape and went deeper into the caverns of Mount Kadar, into the Hollow. The Battle of Aspho Fields, also known as Operation Leveler to the COG. Now, the COG discovered that the UIR were winning the race in orbital satellite weapons, and after gathering intel on the Hammer of Dawn technology, the COG High Command decided that such a weapon could not be allowed to exist in enemy hands. So, they soon formulated a plan to capture the technology, and this became known as Operation Leveler, and the place that housed the Hammer of Dawn tech was known as Aspho Point. The Battle of Aspho Fields gave the COG strategic advantage over the UIR by claiming the stolen UIR technology and used it to perfect the COG's version of the Hammer of Dawn. The UIR Civil War. Despite the COG's claims that the UIR had lost their means to create the Hammer of Dawn after the Coalition stole their research, it turned out that the UIR had managed to successfully create the Hammer of Dawn under their secret space program, which was way beyond the COG's research. However, due to the repercussion of another guaranteed century of war, the UIR leadership decided not to launch the Hammer of Dawn, much to the protest of the UIR military. When the UIR military had enough with the softness of the UIR administration, they tried to launch the Hammer of Dawn themselves, and this caused a small civil war between the UIR military and the UIR administration. The final moments and ending of the Pendulum Wars. For the COG, it will take them 3 years after Aspho Fields to perfect the Hammer of Dawn, and over 30,000 COG soldiers would go on and die in the Pendulum Wars, until Adam Phoenix perfected the weapon, and Chairman Thomas Dalyell threatened the UIR's Premier Yuri Dushenko to surrender or face destruction. After the final battle of the war, the COG and the UIR signed an armistice, ending the war in the COG's favour. The COG replaced several Indian nation governments with pro-coalition governments, which were previously under the administration of Premier Yuri Dushenko. However, some Indian nations refused to surrender and launched an insurgency, such as the infamous Republic of Goraznia. For 6 weeks, the COG began to rule almost all of Syria, rebuilding the towns and cities that were destroyed, and attempting to fix the international relations with the UIR nations who were still fighting against the COG. But this new chapter didn't last very long, as the Locust Horde made their mark on the surface of Sera, and this was known as Emergence Day. Just when the planet Sera thought they were entering a new era, it was in fact the beginning of another destructive war. So that, my friends, is the Pendulum Wars in Gears of War lore. Drop a like if you enjoyed this lore video, subscribe for more similar content like this, and I'll leave a link at the top right of the screen if you want to watch my other lore videos as well. I'm your host Abz, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.